morning of February 7th, 2016 at 8:39 a.m., the director of the Bangladesh Central Bank was making his way to the 10th floor to start his shift. He works in one of the bank's most highly restricted areas, the Accounts and Budgeting Department. When he walked into the office, for some reason, one of the department's printers linked to all the bank's software was malfunctioning. It was causing all sorts of delays for the bank's clients and it needed to be fixed as soon as possible. So the director calls the IT team and the bank's technicians got the printer working again. But the bank director's relief would be short-lived. As soon as it was turned on, the machine started printing out all of the backlogged documents from the days it had been offline. And within minutes, the bank director realized something was seriously wrong. According to the printed documents, the bank had made 35 more transactions than its system had recorded, and those 35 transactions accounted for a total of $1 billion. Someone, somewhere, had just robbed the Bangladesh Central Bank without even setting foot in the building. And this wasn't just any regular bank. This was the country's central bank, the bank that should have been the most secure. And if someone had managed to break through all the bank's defenses without setting off a single alarm, who's to say they wouldn't do it again? The story all begins 9 months prior, right here. 2,100 miles off the coast of Bangladesh in the Philippines on May 15, 2015. 4 individuals entered the RCBC Bank in the Philippines and opened 4 separate bank accounts, each depositing an amount of $500. They then quickly left the bank and left the deposited money in the accounts for a total of 9 months. But fast forward to January 2016, just 1 month before things got weird, something important happens. One of the bank employees was checking his emails just before leaving the office to head home, a routine task on what seemed like any other day inside the office. He quickly clicked around and checked all his emails before heading home, but he actually made a crucial mistake. Unbeknownst to him, he opened an infected link in one of the emails containing malware sent by hackers. The moment he clicked the link, a malicious script was initiated, and the malware installed itself into the bank's system, giving hackers complete access to the Bangladesh Central Bank, completely under the radar. And 1 month later, when the employees of the central bank were shutting down all the systems and left to go home for the weekend, the hackers made their first intrusion into the central banking system. But the central bank wasn't full of cash like a regular bank, it was just one way that banks communicate with each other to validate payments. And the software that processed these payments was SWIFT. SWIFT is a secure global payment network that facilitates financial transactions for banks. It doesn't actually transfer funds, but generates trusted payment orders between 2 accounts, letting banks know that the payments and transfers are legitimate, and then the banks proceed with those transactions. Normally, if a hacker gets access to your bank account, they'll normally just take the money from your account and move it to another account somewhere else. However, the story was quite different here. Instead of someone's account, the hackers targeted the bank itself. The malware program they had installed inside the bank system allowed them to extract the bank's SWIFT credentials, making the transaction process so much easier. The hackers started by issuing out a total of 35 transactions from the Federal Reserve Bank of New York to various bank accounts across the world, and the total amount of these 35 transfers added up to just shy of $1 billion. You see, like many other countries, the Bangladesh Central Bank actually stored billions of dollars at the Federal Reserve Bank of New York for international settlements. But on February 5th, 2016, the Federal Reserve in New York received a notification through the SWIFT system. They just received 35 pending payment transfers from the Bangladesh Central Bank totaling $1 billion. The hackers had fooled the banking system and began processing all 35 transactions smoothly. But then, they had made a mistake. Only 5 of their 35 transactions cleared successfully. The automated system that the New York Fed was using had flagged 30 of these transactions for manual review. What the hackers didn't know was that of the 35 accounts they had prepped to receive the payments, 1 was already placed on the Fed's flagged accounts blacklist and blocked the transactions from automatically processing. On Sunday morning, employees of the Bangladesh Central Bank returned to work after their weekend. They fixed the printer and it started printing all the backlogged transactions. The hackers deliberately sabotaged the printer so that the employees of the Bangladesh Central Bank would waste time trying to figure out what happened. but by the time they did, it would be too late. In just the first 5 transactions, $20 million had already been deposited into a Sri Lankan bank account opened at Deutsche Bank, and another $80 million was deposited into 4 other accounts. The panic was now beginning to set in. The employees of the Bangladesh Central Bank had just realized that it wasn't just one small transfer, but it was in fact 35 transactions that would result in a $1 billion loss for the bank. They thought about contacting the New York Fed immediately to stop the transfers, but it was Sunday, and the New York Fed was closed. In Bangladesh, their weekends were actually Friday and Saturday, with Sunday being the first day of work. The hackers knew this, which made Bangladesh a perfect target. So by the time the New York Fed staff would return to their offices on Monday, it would be too late and the hack would have already made them $1 billion richer. But it all came crashing down for the hackers. The automated system froze all pending transactions for manual review from New York staff. When the New York Fed employees returned on Monday, they were immediately met with flagged transactions. The employees logged in and noticed not only several issues with the transfers, but uncommon transfer activity from the bank. They saw large sums of money not being directed to other banks like normal, but instead to private bank accounts opened in Sri Lanka and the Philippines. Something was seriously wrong, and the staff in New York had questions. So the director of the Bangladesh Central Bank gets a phone call in his office. It's the director from the New York Fed. He reached out to the Bangladesh bank director to confirm if they authorized these transactions, only to find out they were fraudulent. So he blocked all 30 transactions, but the other 5 transactions slipped through, adding up to around $100 million. The Bangladesh director was enraged, so he decided to track down the transactions and see exactly where the money went so he could get the bank's money back. One transaction for $20 million was the weakest link. The bank director looked at the transfer and noticed something interesting. The specific transaction was directed to a private bank account in Sri Lanka. But this wasn't any regular bank account. This was a business bank account, which meant that if this account was opened with the fraudulent business, then there was a chance the director could get his money back. So he called the bank in Sri Lanka to get in contact with the employees to verify the transaction. When the employees opened the account's details, a red flag was raised immediately. When the account was first opened, it was said to be owned by an NGO named Shalika Foundation. But upon closer inspection, the employee noticed the hacker's biggest mistake. There was a typo. The word foundation was misspelled as foundation, so employees knew something was suspicious. And more investigation revealed that the supposed Shalika Foundation wasn't even a real company. The whole thing was one big scam. So the employees vowed to help the director and reverse the transaction, recovering the money he lost. But the director couldn't celebrate yet. There were still 4 transactions remaining, and $80 million still missing. But luckily for him, the hackers had left a paper trail. He discovered that the final 4 transactions had something in common that was more than suspicious. All the transfers were sent to the same country, the same bank, and even the same branch, the RCBC Bank on Jupiter Street in the Philippines. This was the same bank where those 4 individuals opened bank accounts with $500 for the past 9 months. And suddenly, all in one day, they received a combined $80 million. The director attempted to call the RCBC to block those transfers, but he ran into a problem. It was Chinese New Year, a public holiday in the Philippines. But something didn't sit right with the director. Every time he needed to contact a bank's employees, his timing was always off. He didn't believe in luck and he knew something was seriously wrong. And he was 100% correct. The truth is that the hackers had organized this heist very carefully, and their timing was all planned. The hackers chose to access the Bangladesh banking system on Thursday evening because they knew that the weekend was on Friday and Saturday in Bangladesh. And the following day, when there would be no employees, on Friday their transfer request would reach the New York Fed. So that way when the director attempted to contact the RCBC Bank in the Philippines on Monday to block the transactions, it would be Chinese New Year there, and the banks would be closed. And this time the hackers were one step ahead. Normally, for deposits this large, it would immediately trigger an alert at the bank. But in fact, the exact opposite happened. The alarms weren't set off and the funds cleared into the accounts with zero problems. And the same 4 individuals from 9 months ago walked into the bank, withdrew the funds, and took them to a casino, where they could exchange it for cash, making the money now untraceable. And in a later investigation, it was discovered that those 4 accounts were also opened under fraudulent identities. So now the director was in serious trouble. He had now just lost the most amount of money ever recorded in banking history. And with some more digging, investigators also arrested 2 RCBC bank employees named Ding and Gao, who were middlemen working in the bank. And they also revealed that these 2 middlemen were keeping it a secret that they were Chinese operatives, and that without the help of these Chinese insiders, the hackers would not have been able to defraud the Bangladesh Central Bank. But you know what else China is keeping secret? The fact that within 4 years, China owns more than 380,000 acres of farmland in the US. That's enough land to squeeze in every Walmart in the world 8 times. And you wanna know something else that's suspicious? How lots of them aren't even used to actually grow any food. And it wasn't just 5 or 10 of them. No, there were hundreds of them that the government themselves were even suspicious of. And the best part about it is that I'll break it all down in the next video coming out soon, so subscribe for more.